Welcome one and all to part 9 of my challenge in which I am obtaining every Pokémon in the order that they appear in the National Pokédex. You may think that this is the end of the challenge, but this is only part 1 of Generation 9, with it ending at 1010 Pokémon of the current 1025 available. Along with that, Legends ZA will likely introduce more, so you know I'll be playing through that once it comes out. And when we are inevitably introduced to Generation 10, well, you know it'll continue. Now, this may be, at least for now, the end of the series, but I've got plenty more projects for the future, some Pokémon and some not. I did go over these in an update video in February, but just to recap, my two biggest projects I have planned are: I will be doing a full living dex, including all forms, all within Pokémon Home. And for that challenge I will exclusively use Switch games and Pokémon Go, mainly due to the fact that Pokémon Bank may not exist in a few years' time, and it will all be streamed on my Twitch channel, which is KillerKiwi1642. And also, I plan on doing a new series in which I complete regional Pokédexes within games in Pokédex order, starting with completing the Hoenn in order within Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald. So I hope to look forward to them along with many other various challenge videos I have planned. I'll write more about this in the pinned comment, but for now let's get on with the video. The contents of this part of the series were filmed entirely on Twitch, and just like last time, I'll actually be streaming a few hours after this video comes out, so come on down to Twitch after you finish this. Along with that, I stream every Thursday at 6 PM UK time. This segment of the series was a love letter to my fanbase I've accumulated over the past year, as I named every Gen 9 Pokémon I obtained after people in the chat, and we all had a really good time during filming. This is part 9 of a now rather long series. If you've somehow exclusively found this one, a link to the full playlist is in the description. This is a long one compared to the rest of them, so buckle up because you're in for a wild ride. As per usual, I'll go over the rules, and also as per usual, here's the timestamp to skip to them if you know the rules already. I must obtain every Pokémon in the order that they appear in the National Pokédex. Once I've obtained one, I am then allowed to move on and catch the next one after it. However, I am allowed to freely obtain any Pokémon after I obtain it once. Since I've gotten every Gen 1 through 8 Pokémon, any of them that appear can be obtained from the beginning of this video. Alternative forms do not matter for this challenge, so as long as I get any form of a certain species, that's fine. A rule I was using a lot is the fact that I can use any games I want to, and can refer back to games I've used previously in the challenge if certain Pokémon can only be obtained in them. However, every Gen 9 Pokémon exists exclusively in Scarlet and Violet, for now at least, so those are the only ones I used. Or were they? It's not a living dex, so I don't need to obtain them all in one game or have them all together in one place. I can trade back and forth with these games as much as I want as well. The Pokédex in one game isn't what I'm keeping track of, just the Pokémon themselves being obtained. I can use any side games, peripherals, glitches, events, or anything else I can think of, except actual cheating of course. However, I can only use these alternative methods if there is no way at all to obtain it in a core series game without breaking the chain and catching a Pokémon out of order. If I get a Pokémon in a side game, I won't count it as obtained in the context of this challenge until it has been transferred into a mainline game or into Pokémon Home. Also, if I ever do obtain a Pokémon outside of normal means, I will then need to obtain it properly later on if possible. Now, let's visit the Paldea region. I started my Paldea adventure in Scarlet, and gave my guy scarlet coloured hair to make sure I knew that for sure. I streamed this entire segment of the series on Twitch, and had a lot of fun doing so, and my chat were great every time. Since I want to keep consistency with previous videos, the chat will be hidden so that the usual Pokédex tracker can be shown, but I will occasionally show certain messages when needed. Oh, by the way, I'm still going on with this challenge, and as I said at the start, I've got plenty of other ideas for future videos because variation is fun, and this series will end eventually. Therefore, if you're interested to see what I do next, please do subscribe, hit the little bell since YouTube likes to turn off notifications by default, and if you want to catch me live, go to twitch.tv/KillerKiwi1642. Anyway, self-promotion done, back to the real video. The start of this game was a slog as always. I decided not to do what I did in Sword and Shield and get the starters 4 times because I didn't want the viewers of the stream to suffer too much. I walked slowly out of my house, got introduced to Clavel who introduced me to the starters, got the Rotom phone, and then walked painfully slowly to the next destination. I met Nemona, who you only battle 9 times in the game, and I chose Sprigatito, obviously. And it apparently knows how to levitate. I did the usual tutorial battle with Nemona, again the rival choosing the weak starter, and after winning I got the Pokédex. I got given a very important sandwich and made my way into actual gameplay after about 20 minutes. I was forced into an encounter with a Lechonk, which I thankfully didn't have to catch, because otherwise it'd be game over for the challenge. I knocked it out, which Nomona was not expecting or indeed wanting to happen, but she doesn't understand the importance of sticking to my rules. I did catch a Hoppip, which had been legal for me to do since the Gen 2 video. Not because it's good, but just because it was there. I also got Scatterbug and Fletchling, the latter being the only half-decent Pokemon of the lot. Then there was this cutscene where I met Koraidon. Some people in previous videos speculated that this would ruin the challenge, but that is not the case. Koraidon, or Miraidon in Violet, doesn't actually join your team or become obtained until you beat the game. Therefore, having it as a ride Pokemon is a-okay and doesn't break any restrictions at all. Also, I caught a Diglett. This Houndoom arrived and attacked my Sprigatito, Koraidon saved the day, then became exhausted. I met the much less stalkery character Arvin, battled him, then had free reign over what to do next. For a while at least. One important long-term goal was collecting Gimmighoul coins, 999 of them in total. I caught some random Gen 1 through 8 Pokemon, experienced some of the many glitches this game has to offer, got introduced to the cool outdoor Pokemon centres and won a bunch of battles for EXP and item rewards. You don't unlock the ability to ride Koraidon until after reaching the academy and going through a bunch of cutscenes, and it makes it a lot easier to get around, but I still did win a decent few battles and caught some more Pokemon along the way before taking on Nomona for a second time. I reached the big city of Mesa Goza at last, talked to this person here to get the all-important Ball Guy phone case, which was greatly cherished throughout the playthrough, and met this game's Evo team, Team Star. Third game in a row where the evil team isn't evil at all, just a nuisance more than anything. After the first win, Nomona said some Spanish words and gave me the Terra Orb, this game's battle gimmick. It's pretty good for making battles easier, but the sacrifice is the painfully long, unskippable animation that plays every time you terrestrialize your Pokemon. It's still going. Still going. There we go. After that win, I climbed the enormous staircase, entered the academy, and got introduced to my low FPS classmates. Nomona gave me access to Victory Road, which is actually just the name given to the journey of getting the 8 badges in this game. There are actually 10 other badges, as there are 3 different story paths. I had bad memories of this game due to its performance issues and glitches, though I will say the concept of having 3 sets of badges all over the world is a pretty cool idea. With that said, I spoke to Arvin to get the 5 Titan badge locations, and had my phone hacked. My guy doesn't seem to be too concerned about that. I spoke to Clavel in his office, met Professor Seda, not named after a tree, oddly enough, and was told about Koraidon and its capabilities. I got shown to my room, sat through another ridiculously long cutscene, and finally... Oh wait, I also need to be told about the 5 Team Star bases. And finally, gained the ability to free roam and ride around on Koraidon. I still hadn't even evolved my starter, so I had a lot to do. I made sure to catch a Paldean Whooper for later, and then just ran around the wilds battling every trainer I could find. I went to Cortondo, as I thought it would be for the best to beat the gyms in their intended order, at least for now anyway. The bug gym here is the lowest level, which was ideal considering Sprigatito's weakness to that type. But then there was a change of plan. Someone in chat by the name Ifdes, sorry if I butchered the pronunciation, pointed out that the EXP charm can be obtained already. I actually thought you needed to beat the game to access the DLC, but it turned out that I could go there straight from the beginning. So I went to the academy to talk to Briar and was taken to Kitakami. The main reason to come here is to get a few extra Pokemon added by the DLC, but that's not why I had actually come here. As I just said, it was to unlock the EXP charm, which boosts experience gain by 50%, which would of course make a massive difference to how quickly I'd get this part of the challenge done. The main 2 characters in this DLC are Carmine and Kieran, and I was slightly underleveled for taking them on, but it would be worth it in the long run. Oh look, she's heard of my videos. That's amazing. Anyway, I beat Kieran as well, got partnered up with him for the tasks ahead, unlocked the second part of the DLC, which I wouldn't be doing yet, met Perrin, whose very long side quest would be getting done later, as the rewards are mandatory, but require hundreds of Pokemon to be caught, and then actually went and did the required tasks to move the Teal Mask story forward. This simply consisted of viewing some signboards with lore about the loyal 3 legendary Pokemon in Kitakami. After that, I climbed Oni Mountain without Koraidon having any additional powers, which I thought would be impossible at first, but I found a path that led to the dreaded den. I went into this fight with Kieran full of confidence, easily sweeping aside his Poliwag with Sprigatito, who also reached level 16 in the process. And then, So yeah, I lost, due to a combination of bad crit luck and paying more attention to the chat than the game. Due to Sprigatito fainting, it didn't evolve sadly. Anyway, I won on round 2, and Sprigatito finally evolved into Floragato. 2 whole Gen 9 Pokémon only took 3 hours and 22 minutes. That EXP charm was a lot further into the story than I had initially realised, but I had been assured that it was possible without breaking any of my rules, so I soldiered on. Also, my character's hair is just awful. Oh, and I had to fight Carmine again. I definitely won the first time, don't check the VODs. I actually do check the VODs, I've got a VOD channel now, it's called Kiwi VODs. After that, I had no more battles to do here, just had to wander about in the festival and enter this little minigame called Ogre Oustin. It was pretty simple, just had to run around and collect specific amounts of berries and bring them back to their corresponding podiums. Doing 3 rounds of this, I then finally unlocked the EXP charm. I also met a certain Pokémon that I was not allowed to catch yet. I did interact with it to make the Teomas story move forward slightly more, though only because I was locked in place here until I finished the festival. After meeting the ogre and deliberately keeping it a secret from Kieran, I was finally allowed to leave and go back to Paldea. I would of course be revisiting this place, but not for a long time. First things first, the gym challenge. The bug gym required me to do this silly little game where I roll around a giant bouncy olive. It went about as well as it usually does, that is to say, not very, but it's not timed, so I'm pretty sure you can't lose. After passing the test, I was able to battle the leader, Katie. Because I'd done plenty of levelling well in Kitakami, the battle was pretty straightforward. Her Pokémon resist grass, but I had Fletchinder, so they were all easy to take down. With that win, I finally had one singular badge out of 18. It was going to be a long one. The starters are always one of the most tedious parts of these videos, as I was stuck using older Pokémon until all 3 starters were fully evolved in order. I'll also just point out one of the many rare Charcadet that I wasn't allowed to catch. Very saddening. Another Pokémon I couldn't catch, but could certainly knock out, was Gimmighoul. The coin hoarders only give 1 coin, but knocking out these ones give 50 or more, so I took them out whenever I found them. I went to Artisan to get another badge, and to get stalked again by Nemona. Well, first I decided I no longer wanted to look at that haircut anymore, so I went to Mesa Goza so I could look more like a member of the Yakuza, then headed back to Artisan and actually did the gym test properly. This consisted of rounding up 10 Sunflora, with more and more Sunflora tanking the FPS and causing other various visual glitches. A delight to see. Anyway, gym test completed, time to take on the leader. The leader was Brassius, who's definitely not Hubert from Fire Emblem 3 Houses. And again, thanks to Fletchinder, his grass types were swept aside with ease, including his non-rock Sudowoodo. Gym defeated, 2 badges. The next badge I got was not from a gym, but was in fact from a Titan Pokémon. I hunted down the Titan Cloth and beat it extremely easily, as Floragato was a little bit higher level than the game would expect by this point. In these fights you beat it twice, with the first time being a solo effort and the second with Arvin. And after beating each one, it shrivels up into nothingness, you find some Herba Mystica, make some dinner, and Koraidon eats the sandwich made for you, resulting in it gaining a new power. In this case, it gained the ability to dash, which was a relief because slow movement for that long was not fun. Before I went any further, I needed to make sure to download the mythical Pechaberry event from Mystery Gift. It was still available, and will presumably continue to be available until Scarlet and Violet are no longer supported. This wasn't needed for a long time, but I wanted to be prepared for the future. Oh, and I caught a Dunsparce, because it may well just have a new evolution in this generation. I reached the Fire-type Team Starbase, and was introduced to a brand new character, Clive, completely distinct from anyone I had met previously. I actually decided to not take on this base yet, due to having nothing good against fire types, and instead left it till later. So I went for gym badge number 3. Still keeping within what is believed to be the order that the devs intended the badges to be obtained, I headed to Levincia. As always, Nemona ambushed me at the gym, although we actually needed to battle as well. Once done, I started the gym test, which just consisted of listening to Gen Z slang and finding the director in various locations. Iono uses electric types. I didn't have much to use against them, so I just had to win through brute force, and after the win I had 3 gym badges. Then it was time for more battles against various trainers, featuring more great camera angles. I headed to another Team Star base. This time it was the Dark type one, which was a lot easier for me to take on. After winning the battles at the entrance, the gimmick for these bases is that you knock out a bunch of Pokemon using the Let's Go mechanic, and after 30 are defeated you can fight the boss. The boss here is Giacomo, and they all ride on Starmobiles, which are modified Revavroom that you can't actually obtain, which is a shame because they'd be very cool to use in battles, with a little tweak to their stats of course. This battle was very easy because I was likely meant to take it on at a lower level, and for taking down all his Pokemon, including the Starmobile, I got the first of 5 star badges and unlocked a bunch of TMs and materials. This was the end of the first stream, and I will say I was very pleased with the outcome, both how nice the chat was and how many people joined. I decided I'd name each Gen 9 Pokemon after someone in chat who wanted it, with my starter being named Galaga. Yes, my first stream was 8 hours long and resulted in 2 new Pokemon. Just a little side note, I was pulling absolutely ridiculous numbers from these streams, far more than I'd ever have anticipated, and this was really a huge motivator to do these streams. My plan for the second stream was to try and get Florigato evolved into Meowscarada. Surely I'd manage that within 4 hours, which was the time I set for each stream. I started by beating a trainer and realised there were some Chansey in the background. They give massive amounts of experience and are very easy to KO with physical moves, which was a perfect situation. This was genuinely one of the luckiest things that could have happened here. I was expecting the whole stream to just be story progress and me trying to fully evolve my starter, but this Chansey outbreak certainly fast-tracked that. As you can see, one knockout would give over 1000 EXP to my lead and plenty to the rest of the team. So, although it wasn't the most thrilling gameplay, it was a much faster way to level up than going through the main story. What was thrilling, however, was the fact that I stumbled across a shiny Swablu. This was definitely the best looking shiny I'd found so far during the challenge. Along with that, Altaria is a very good Pokemon and I decided I'd make it one of my main team members. Even though Fletchunder had served me well, there was only room for one flying type in my team, and I was planning on using a different fire type later, so I had to say goodbye. With that done, Florigato only needed a few more Chansey slaughters to reach level 36. Therefore, at long last, I fully evolved one starter. With Meowscarada added to the list, it was time to swap over to Violet. Like I had done many times before, the fire type would be chosen by the character who would later be obliterated from existence. Unfortunately, you need to reach the academy in order to unlock the ability to trade, and that took a long time and had to be done 2 more times. But instead of complaining, I just got on with it, chose Fuecoco and did exactly the same thing I'd done in Scarlet. I also named it Yeti Bite. I ran through the game as fast as possible, with the only difference being that I was following Miraidon instead of Coraidon, and everyone was wearing purple instead of orange. And we had Professor Turo instead of Professor Seda. With that long and drawn out process out of the way, I was allowed to trade. I was using Violet on my spare Switch, hence why I wasn't able to just use Pokemon Home to transfer them instead. I traded Fuecoco into Scarlet due to the nice EXP boost given by traded Pokemon, and I was glad to find out that daily outbreaks are tied to the real date and not in-game days, so the Chansey were still there. After one single knockout, Fuecoco got to level 16 and evolved into Crocalor. While grinding for the next evolution, I remembered to catch Mankey, as I need one to evolve into certain Gen 9 Pokemon later, and since it had fully evolved into a Gen 9 Pokemon, I nicknamed it, that one being What Guy. I made the painful decision to swap it for one of my favourites, Phalanx. I then evolved it into Primeape relatively quickly. Crocalor spent the next 15 minutes or so massacring the local population of Chansey, reaching level 36 and evolved into Skeledirge. And then Temp Kiwi was deleted and replaced with Fem Kiwi. This was going to be the main Violet save file that I used. It would be used mainly for version exclusives. Well, that was the original plan, but we all know by now that my plans don't often work out. Anyway, I chose Quaxley, called it Collect Stuff, and then rushed through the start of the game yet again in order to unlock trading. After throwing the Quaxley into Scarlet, since this was still the same day, I continued to KO Chansey and evolved Quaxley into Quaxwell after it surpassed level 16. And guess what happened 20 minutes later? Yeah, it evolved into Quaquaval. And the starters were finally out of the way, and I was able to start catching new Pokémon. Oh, and also, Shiny Swablu became Shiny Altaria. Very nice. By the way, if you skipped most of the video to find the first captures, you will go back right now and watch it from the start. You need context, and I like storytelling. Anyway, Lechonk was first up. From here, a flurry of captures began. I didn't name it after a chat member though. Instead I named it after my good friend John Pork. R.I.P. John Pork, you were a real one. Right, what was I doing again? Oh yeah, Oinkologne. As per usual, I avoided having to evolve Pokemon when possible, catching this instead of evolving John Pork, and named it Little Mongoose, despite it not being little or a mongoose. Next up was Tarantula. I kept getting critical captures on common Pokemon, using up my good luck in useless places rather than on legendaries. Also, it was nicknamed Enbryu. No idea if I pronounced that correctly. Spidops was next. There were plenty Spidops haters in the chat, so it was hard to get a name for it, but eventually it was named Devour Gregs. Disclaimer, this video is in no way affiliated with or sponsored by Gregs. Then I encountered a problem that happened a lot. A Pokemon I'd seen loads of times but I had to ignore, in this case Nimble, could not be found when I actually needed it. I eventually found it by accident while running around, and after the catch, it was nicknamed Wheat Bar. So I was hoping I wouldn't need to play Pokemon Go ever again, however I was checking it every so often just in case specific Pokemon would appear in it that would help later. While checking, on one day I randomly found a Kirlia wearing a bowler hat. That's all, I just wanted to highlight that I now own a dapper Kirlia. Before getting any new Pokemon, I had a few things I needed to get out of the way that would help me out later. I actually wasn't expecting the Blueberry Academy director to show up here, and nor was I aware that this part of the DLC was available now, but I wasn't planning on heading there yet. The reason I entered the Academy was to talk to Jacques, as since I had caught 30 Pokemon, I was able to get the TM for False Swipe. Then I headed to the shop to buy some strawberries and bananas, useful for spawning specific Pokemon through the use of sandwiches. I then went on a long hunt to find Pawniard. As we know, Bisharp has an evolved form introduced in Gen 9, King Gambit, so I wanted to get this sorted early. Also, I wanted to give it False Swipe. As you can see by the time change, it took quite a while to find, but once I did, I caught it, and an hour or so later its name was claimed as CAD SC. After this, I wanted to get my hands on Bronzor fragments, 10 to be exact. They can be found up this cliff, though I didn't have the high jump or climb. So I improvised. Once I got up the cliff in a silly way, I reached these ruins and set up a picnic. I was under the assumption that just shoving bananas and strawberries onto a sandwich would give me what I needed, but the mechanics are slightly more intricate than that. I made a sickeningly sweet fruit baguette, which my guy seemed to like, and I am only now realising in post that it didn't actually raise the encounter power for Psychic, but rather the catching power. The placebo effect made me assume that they were more Bronzor than normal though, and so I just sent out my big cat to attack them for a few minutes until I had 10 Bronzor fragments, which would be used later to get a very important item. I entered the next town, Cascarafa, and started the gym test, which was just taking the gym leader Kofu's wallet back to him. I wasn't planning on doing the next gym yet though. I wanted to catch Lokix instead of evolving Nimble. On the map tracker I was using, the best location to find Lokix actually required swimming, so I made a quick detour to beat the Titan Bombardier. Because my luxury was slightly overleveled in comparison, it went down extremely quickly. After that win, the usual thing happened with Arvin, getting the Herba Mystica and the badge, and Koraidon gained the ability to swim. Also, Arvin is confirmed to be the best character, doing all this to save his dog. So, now that I could swim, the map doesn't have contour lines. It seemed like I could jump this gap, but nope, big mountain in the way. Instead I just decided I'd go ahead and move the story forward to get Kofu to get to his gym. Hey look, another Sharkadet I can't catch yet. I reached the market, Kofu's gym trainer fought me, I annihilated him with luxury, gave the wallet back, did an auction, and was able to face him. But first, I headed to another location where you can definitely, 100% guaranteed find Lokix. While running towards Medali, I ran into Staravia. Or not. Ditto was a very lucky find, as I was planning on doing some breeding later. So yes, I reached Medali. I did not want to take on the gym yet, because that experience would be wasted. I needed to catch Lokix I didn't want to have to evolve Nimble because I had meticulously planned my schedule the week before. According to multiple sources, Lockix definitely appears on this cliff. I gave up and just added Nimble to my team. It was unfortunate because my plan was to do this gym and the next to gain experience for an evolution later, but that is just the nature of Pokemon and I had definitely used up all my luck on the previous stream. So, with Nimble in the back, I quickly dispatched of Kofu's team with electricity and got my 4th gym badge. Then I decided I'd take on another Team Starbase, this time the Fire type. I met up with Clive, did the usual 30 Pokemon KO, and was able to fight the boss, Mela. Despite her being the most intimidating looking person in the game, I had come here a little bit later than you're expected to, and so I was able to KO her Torkoal and the giant car really easily. 2nd of 5 Team Star badges obtained, and oh look, another Charcadet. Since Nimble still hadn't evolved, and I was planning on getting the high jump ability anyway, I went to the Eastern Desert to fight the Titan Earthworm. Eventually. Quaquaval being fighting type made the fight simple, and yeah, so did Arvin and his Toadstool, totally. Easy win, another Herba Mystica obtained, and Koraidon was now able to jump really high. Guess who still hadn't evolved? This was not a good situation. I was running out of trainers to grind levels on. Also, I was going to figure this puzzle out myself, but people in chat immediately posted the answer and I was tired, so I just listened to them. The gym leader, Larry, is the one I identify with more than any others, since he is also an overly stressed and tired 9-to-5 worker. Anyway, I KO'd his whole team with fighting moves, and at long last, Nimble gained enough EXP to be able to evolve into Lockix, using the cool colourful background rather than it evolving an overworld for a change. So, with that done, Nimona immediately dragged me outside for a battle, with all that EXP going to waste that I would have saved for other evolutions. Never mind, I can't stay mad at her. Right, finally, I got back to catching. First up was Pawmi, thankfully an easy find, and after the catch, it was named Cassius. And I couldn't be bothered evolving it, so I caught a wild Pawmo as well, nicknamed Lucozade. I was hoping it would be full of the stuff because it was going to need to run around a lot. My plan before everything got thrown out of whack was to get the Titan Earthworm defeated ASAP to unlock the high jump. You see, if you send out a Pokemon using the Let's Go mechanic and stand on top of a Pokemon Center, it just runs around frantically. Some may call it a glitch, I like to call it something more along the lines of it getting confused as to where the player has gone. However, I was on stream. Nobody wants to sit and watch that for 10 minutes, so I took Pawmo for a stroll properly. Pawmo evolves into Pawmot when it takes 1000 steps while following the player and levels up, and by how awkward it was to manoeuvre, I can see why people used the roof method. After walking what I believed to have been 1000 or more steps, I trained Pawmo to level it up, and thankfully, it did indeed evolve into Pawmot. Then I headed to the Pokemon League, but not to take on the Elite Four, no, just to catch 2 mice. Tandemaus was caught, and they were nicknamed Flora and Fauna. I decided I'd just be silly and take on another Titan, this time Great Tusk. At first I was going to avoid it, as it's level 45, but then I realised that my starter was roughly the same level, and, well, it's Grass type. Therefore, what I thought would be daunting turned out to be very easy, and Tandemaus gained a ton of levels from it. Getting the 4th Herba Mystica, Koraidon gained the ability to glide. And I made use of it immediately, because who wouldn't? My next destination was the 6th gym in Alfornada. It required me to go through this cavern, taking this detour to an alternative entrance. The trainers here were at a decent level, so after a few KOs, Tandemaus leveled up to required level, and then due to what I'm assuming is another glitch, it actually evolved without any animation. Apparently it'll give you an animation if it was included in battle, but otherwise the babies spawn in off-screen and it becomes mousehold. I ran through Alfornada Cavern and avoided trainers that I'd need for later experience, somehow got turned around at one point and came out of the main entrance. Well, you know what, it didn't matter, I needed to get more catches done anyway. Starting with Fido. And it was nicknamed Tetra Schmetra. This person had a C in their name, but it had to be cut out due to the character limit, so as a compromise I've edited in the C. Then instead of evolving it, I found and caught Dachsbun. And it was nicknamed Dr. Mysticus. Very cool name. Keeping the momentum going, I next went to an early game area to catch a bush. Not really, it's just Smoliv. And it was nicknamed Conrad BL _. The next one was awful. At this point in my lucrative streaming career, I still hadn't worked out when I should stop streaming. I was very tired and kept making bad decisions. Dolive appears here quite rarely, so I made sandwiches that I thought would boost normal type encounters, but it just wouldn't happen, because I wasn't putting on enough ingredients and things kept falling off. This abomination was supposed to boost normal, but instead boosted bug, which was no good, as Vivillon kept spawning in Dolive's place. I did still run around for a bit to see if it would spawn, but then I made a decision to just go to bed and try again the next day. And so I gained a degree in quantum mechanics and was able to work out that putting 5 pieces of watercress and 12 tofu blocks on a dry sandwich with salt and pepper and no top bun would result in lots of normal type encounters. I found out later that a ham and pickle sandwich will also do this, but I think mine was a lot more creative. After not too long, a Dolive appeared amongst some Smoliv, one of which decided to get in the way. Thankfully it didn't go far, and I was able to enter a battle with it. And I caught it, of course, and it was named Yo-Pro, and the plan now was to evolve it. I went back to the Alfornada cavern, beating every trainer in sight, and also caught a Dunsparce here, as they were high enough level to already have Hyperdrill, needed for its later evolution. Nobody had claimed a name for it either, so it stayed unnamed for the time being. I successfully exited the cave the correct way this time, reached to Alfornada, and admired the cool pictures of Gen 1 sprites on the wall. Dolive was only one level away from evolving, so after a few wild Pokemon KOs, it evolved into Arboliva. Instead of taking on the gym, I focused on more captures. First up was Squawkabilly, an easy find and an easy catch. I named it Mad with 2 Ds, _ 55. I definitely could have caught Knackley at a higher level, but this was the only area I could remember it appearing. I caught it and decided that level 38 would be too high to train using the remaining gyms, so I traded it to Violet. But not before naming it Zappin. Along with trading Knackley, I also sent Quackoval back to Violet, a level 48 which obeyed my character in that game, despite her having no badges due to her being the original trainer. Before this stream, I actually bought the DLC in Violet. £31.49 well spent. This would be worth it, of course, as I needed to first do exactly what I did at the beginning of Scarlet, which was get the EXP charm. This was a much quicker process with the overpowered starter. With that done, I did some olive rolling, beat Katie, beat the Titan Bombardier, beat the Titan Cloth, beat Brassius, beat Mela, won some battles against Iono's trainers which caused Knackley to evolve into Knacklestack, and of course beat Iono herself, beat the Titan Earthworm, downloaded the mythical Petuberry into this game as well, just in case my Scarlet save file got corrupted and the event disappeared from Mystery Gift Online. Yeah, I have contingency plans for everything. I got raided on Twitch for the first time, which I certainly wasn't expecting, but it was hugely appreciated nonetheless. Shout out to Cyndaquil and Dunsparce, who has been doing challenges where they were playing through Pokemon games using Pokemon only beginning with the letter A, a very cool and unique concept. Give a little follow, they deserve it. I beat Giacomo, beat the Titan Iron Treads, well, once I eventually chase it down. Beat Kofu, found a Knacklestack which was level 33. I decided not to catch it because it would gain slower EXP than the one I already had, and I didn't want to have to re-nickname it. I reached Larry and beat him, then beat Nemona outside, and Violet was now up to date with Scarlet in terms of story progress. Since Scarlet was the main game for catching, I wanted to swap back ASAP, so I just used candies to evolve Knacklestack into Garganacl. With that, Violet was put on hold, for now. In Scarlet, I remember to talk to this guy after beating 5 trainers in West Province Area 3 to get an amulet coin, given to my starter immediately. After that, I headed into the desert to catch a Larvesta, since it has Flame Body, needed for something I was going to do soon. I found out that Charcadet has a guaranteed spawn, catching it and nicknaming it Horizon. I then set up a picnic with just Charcadet and Ditto in my team. Well, I tried to, but the picnic table decided it didn't want to appear. I tried it in a different location, just in case something was wrong, but yeah. Good game. Restarting the game, I then enacted my master plan of getting a Charcadet via breeding, training it to Violet and having it gained fast EXP as a main party member. Well, that would have been a quick one if the daycare centre mechanic still existed rather than this very annoying, unreliable method. It took a ridiculously long time for an egg to appear here, even with a sandwich boosting it. With Larvesta and my party halving the number of steps required to hatch it, I got a second Charcadet. And I named it Scarface. I reached Zapapico, which doesn't have many points of interest apart from this NPC who trades in auspicious armour for 10 bronze ore fragments. Using this on the Koch Charcadet, I evolved it into Armour Rouge. I traded the hatched Charcadet to Violet. I had dripped out this character just like the other, and after making another awful creation, I spawned lots of Sinistea outside Alfornada. After KOing enough to get 10 Sinistea chips, and also getting the amulet coin again, I headed to Zapapico where this NPC wanted 10 Sinistea chips. As a reward I got the Malicious Armour. I used this on Charcadet and evolved it into Ceroledge. I remember seeing lots of tadbulbs south of Levincia, but typically I couldn't find any. I did however see something I never expected to see. There was a ghostly Psyduck stuck inside this wall. Anyway, I left and re-entered and found a tadbulb, and caught it very easily, and nicknamed it Scooby. I used a Thunderstone on it straight after, causing it to evolve into Bellybolt. Without wasting any time, I found a walk trail right after this, caught it and named it MCMIVC, which is apparently 1994 in Roman numerals, but also according to a different website it's not a valid Roman numeral. I headed to the island from earlier where I found Dolive and caught a Kilowatt trail. Nobody claimed the name for this, and since the number of new chatters on that day had plateaued, I had to improvise. I called it Kilo MCMIVC. Very creative. Next I found Maschiff, and after the catch named it Kratzel. They had also claimed Mobostif, but I found one in the wild, and as always, I'll catch it in the wild if it saves me time. Nobody was claiming a name for this big cool dog, so a poll resulted in it being called My Balls Sniff. I hope you're pleased with yourselves. I entered Tag Tree Thicket for the first time, met Clive again as the Poison Team Starbase is here, and found the next Pokemon, Shroodle. Or not. I accidentally strayed too close to the base entrance and was given the options yes or yes to engage with them, wasting a tiny bit of EXP. Before going into the base, I actually did catch a Shroodle this time. It evolves at level 28 and it was level 27, which was perfect. After the catch, I named it Licky Kitty, and the plan was to bring it through the base to hopefully level it up once. Doing the usual knockout fest of random Pokemon in the base, I then fought the leader, Atticus, and after a not so difficult time I knocked out all his Pokemon, got the poison badge, got some TM materials, and found out that Team Star battles don't give out any experience. I saw an Oranguru, knowing that a big Pokemon like that would give plenty of experience. Alright, the Zorua tricking me twice was annoying, and to top that off I found a wild Grafaiai. I just decided I already committed to evolving the Shroodle, and so I knocked it out. And therefore Shroodle actually evolved into Grafaiai. Next up was Bramblin, which, by the way, only has one GIF on Tenor. For now. Catching it, I gave it the nickname Vaethir. Apologies for the, again, no doubt, incorrect pronunciation. This was another annoying following evolution. I still couldn't figure out how to get it to run around on its own without having to move at all, and I got bored and took it for a walk through the desert. One level up later and it evolved into Bramblegast. I headed back to the Lag Tree Thicket, I'm sure I'm the first person to ever make that joke, and was on the lookout for Toadschool. According to Bulbapedia, it appears 2% of the time in most of the areas I had access to, with this place being 10% instead. So I ran around hoping I'd find one soon. Well, I did find a very rare Applin. It doesn't appear very often in this area and was needed for later and evolves into Diplin and then into Hydrapple. I got bored of looking for Toadschool and expedited the process by making the worst laid out ham sandwich you'll ever find. After making that, I found Toadschool immediately. God damn it. Eventually the game stopped trolling me and I found a real 100% authentic Toadschool, and I caught it. And I nicknamed it Drazer's Cool. Since Toadschool only appears in the wild in the north, I decided I'd just evolve this one. I entered the Alfornada gym, got given a lucky egg which I gave to Toadschool, and then started the gym challenge. It consisted of pressing a button every so often. It takes a needlessly long time to complete and also includes a few battles in between. After winning the last battle, Toadschool evolved into Toadscruel. Before ditching it in a box forever, we had a little bit of fun watching the way it walks. Cloth was next, and it has no evolutions, so it was a simple one. After the catch, it was nicknamed Rose Artemis. Next up, I took a trip back to the desert to find Capsakid. Every person talking in chat was already named after something, so I named it after a nice mild curry, tikka masala. Once I was able to spell it correctly. I gave it a Firestone and it evolved into Scovillain. And then I named it after a nice spicy curry, Madras. Annoyingly, I found an Espathra in the wild while looking for a Relor. It's very rare as far as I can tell, and even more annoyingly, I found literally every Pokemon you can find in the desert except Relor, despite it being extremely common. After too long, I did find it, caught it, and found out no one wants to be named after a dung beetle. It was nicknamed Fred Durst. If you know, you know. Round 3 of trying to see if I could angle myself in a way that results in me not having to move. Failed again. So it was another trip into the desert. I found another Espathra. I was determined to not have to grind Flittle at all, and they were also nearby and also happened to be after Rabska, so I walked in circles around this Espathra for ages to stop it from despawning while adding up steps. I leveled up Relor and evolved into Rabska, and the Espathra was still spawned in. Keeping its attention, I then entered a battle with a wild Flittle. I was in desperate need to get this caught before Espathra despawned, so I did just that. I didn't even bother nicknaming it, just wanted back on the overworld. I successfully kept it on screen and entered the battle. I caught Espathra and named it Cheesy, which was also meant to be the name of Flittle as the original plan was to evolve it. Oh well. Next up was Tinkatink. This was another where someone had requested the full evolutionary line. After it was caught, I named it Flu, but it can also catch wild Tinkatuff, and I was all for efficiency, so I went and caught one of them as well. After the catch, I named it Flu. Again. I finally actually took on the gym battle because I was not going to be finding a wild Tinkatun. Thankfully, Merscarada being dark type made this gym easy, though the fact that it was no longer OP enough to one-hit KO everything was slightly concerning. With Tulip's last Pokemon down, Tinkatuff evolved into Tinkatun. With 6 gym badges, I can now buy Quick Balls at long last, and with that I got back to catching. Down at the beach, I snuck up on and caught a Wiglet. Hey look Pete, you're famous. I nicknamed it EV-Fan1. Never knew Wiglet loved Eevee that much, but now we know. Thankfully I found a Chansey which made the evolution incredibly fast, with it evolving into Wugtrio. Bombardier was one that I kept finding on the overworld but never found it when it became available, so I gave up the search and went to catch the former Titan form instead. During the battle, a sleepy Psyduck was watching me. It was then later joined by another one of the Ghost Psyduck. Oh, and also I caught Bombardier. And it was named Pete, after Pete, who had just come online a few minutes beforehand. Finizen was next, which has a strange evolution method. I caught one here, but it was only level 15, so I went to check the beach near Levincia to see if that one would be higher level, and it was level 23, so I caught that one instead. I nicknamed it Super Lopez. I traded it to Violet, the plan being to get it to level quickly while beating the gym. And I did indeed beat the gym. It didn't reach its required level of 38, which was good because it wouldn't evolve anyway if I did that. To evolve Finizen, you need to be in the Union Circle group. No idea how anyone would figure this out without a guide other than doing it completely by accident. So, with a Union Circle set up between both of myselves, I headed into the area near Alfornada where the Pokemon levels are in the 40s, and for not too long I got it to level 37, used one rare candy, and it evolved into the same Pokemon but with a heart on its chest. Palafin is meant to look like this, but only appears as so in battle, unfortunately. Before going any further, I needed to have dinner, but I made sure my chat had something to look at while I did so. Next up was Varoom, which was an easy find near Zapapico. I decided I'd evolve it rather than catching Revavroom, since there weren't many grinds left anyway. I nicknamed it GSP-IXI-9 and then headed to Casaroya Lake. Fighting through the severe lag, I reached the island in the middle. Thankfully you don't have to sit through this yourselves, however. I found a Tatsugiri saying Titan, and a Dondozo appeared and swallowed it. KOing the Dondozo, the usual second phase occurred, I knocked out that one, and then the true Titan, Tatsugiri, was also knocked out. With that done, every Titan Pokemon had been defeated. Koraidon finally unlocked the ability to climb, which unlocked the rest of the map for me. And also Arvin once again proved that he's the best character, and his dog got better. Putting the climbing to immediate effect, I made my way through Glaciado Mountain, beating any trainers or higher level Pokemon for extra EXP. As per usual, I found rare wild Pokemon that I couldn't catch yet, I wonder who had the bright idea of doing this challenge in the first place. I reached Montenevera to take on the next gym, though there was another mandatory Nimona battle first. Wasn't complaining, more experience for my little car. The gym test here is to get the crowd going for the upcoming rap concert, doing so by beating all the trainers, including MC Sledge himself. I then took on the MC of RIP, Rhyme, and she uses ghost types, so Meowscarada had an easy time. I likely wasn't even paying attention, but rather mashing A while reading the chat. Look at that funky little dog. Look at him go. DJ G-Rave. The puns in this place are magnificent. Anyway, I won and got my 7th gym badge, daring to get one out of the recommended order. I found an ice stone randomly while running around, useful for later, and after a few KOs, Varoom at long last evolved into Revavroom. There weren't that many grinds remaining, with the next couple being non-evolving. This started with Cyclizar, and after the capture I named it Flugglegum. Don't worry about it. Then I went back to the quarry and caught Orthworm. This was another low-key stream, with the only chatters being people who had already reserved a name, so I called it Worm. With Worm caught, I entered Alfornada Cavern to get Glimmet. Unfortunately, I charged headfirst into it and didn't realise it has self-destruct. I also had no idea how rare it was. I spent 10 minutes running around the cavern trying to find another one, turning up no results. I got bored of running around and went to Medali to get food that would boost rock encounters. I somehow forgot that the restaurant was in the gym and went to this building instead, and noticed that they'd actually modelled an estate agent building, complete with posters of houses in the window and a logo with a lock and a key. I think I'm probably the first person to have ever noticed this detail, and I will say it is rare to find such attention to detail in these games. Oh right, yeah, Pokédex. I went into the treasure eatery and bought a mustard rice ball, boosting rock encounters, and headed back to Alfornada Cavern, also with Skeledirge in front to stop self-destruct, and then I actually just caught it in one ball. I nicknamed it No-No-Me, and it was one level away from evolving. I headed to an area that has lots of chancy encounters, though I also triggered another Team Star base cutscene with Clive. I then fought a piano teacher, and after winning, Glimmet had leveled up and therefore evolved into Glimora. I had found lots of Grievard before this, and a few Houndstone, and the saga of bad luck continued, taking me a long time to find Go Away Cubchew, taking me a long time to find the little ghost dog. I did eventually see the little candle pop out of the ground, and after the catch it was nicknamed Rocket. It only evolves at night, and it was morning, with this game having no way to advance the time, so I just decided to keep it in the back and hope I'd find a wild Houndstone. To pass some of the time, I entered the Fairy Team Star base, did the usual 30 Pokemon knockout. Well, tried to, but the lag was so bad that the game wasn't even registering my inputs. The usual happened with the Starmobile arriving, this time fighting the Fairy-type boss, Ortega, and my team was pretty favourable against his. After the win, the usual retirement of the boss happened, I got a badge, a cutscene with Cool Guy Clive, and Penny appeared and gave me lots of TM materials. I then headed to Glaciado Mountain to do the gym test, which is literally just slide down a mountain. And as you can see from the lighting, Grievard would certainly evolve after this next gym battle. Grusha was my final gym leader to take on, and he yet again keeps up the trend of ice types being left until later on. Still don't know why they make one of the frailest types always a late game boss. I mean, you've got Lorelei, Elite 4, Price, 7th Gym, Glacia, Elite 4, Candace, 7th Gym, Bryce, 7th Gym, Wolfric, 8th Gym, Melanie, 7th Gym, Garrick, last area, Grusha, expected 8th Gym. But anyway, with that rant done, time to annihilate Grusha's team with my unstoppable flamethrower. Including this inferior blue-coloured Altaria. Get that imposter out of here. Oh yeah, so Grievard levelled up in that battle, and since it was nighttime, it evolved into Houndstone. With that done, I had all 8 gym badges and only had 1 badge left in Scarlet before I could complete the full game, that being the fighting-type Team Star base. I was invited by Geeta and Nimona to take on the Elite 4, and also invited by Arvin to give him one last battle, but I was saving both for later. Professor Seda wanted us to investigate Area 0, but again that's exposition for later. First, I needed to go hunting for a large list of Pokemon I was still missing, starting with Flamigo. Or should I say, Pimbus Lover. Setoddle was next, thankfully appearing quickly. After it was caught, I nicknamed it Ifdes. I gave it the Ice Stone I found earlier, immediately evolving it into Setitan. I landed back in Lag Lake, as the next 3 could all be found there. I was looking for Veluza, but it ended up finding me. I was again running low on willing chatters, so after catching Veluza, I gave it a very creative name, featuring way too many spaces. I was getting tired. The next one was easy to spot, the giant Dondozo, so big that it can't even fit on screen in battle. After the battle, I nicknamed it Don Hector. After catching it, Poniard had reached level 52 and evolved into Bisharp at long last. Back on the island, I caught a Tatsugiri. I wasn't bothered about the form, of course, as said many times, forms don't matter, just the species itself. Also, I called it Sol. It was now time for the new evolutions. I withdrew What Guy for the first time in a while, as it was his time to shine. And by shine I mean use Rage Fist 20 times. Fortunately though, I did mean use 20 times. It's a ghost type move, so using it on a normal type 20 times will yield the same results but much faster. Annoyingly, it has 10 PP, so after exhausting them all in one Smoliv, I did need to go back to the centre and repeat it on a Fletchling. However, once done, I went back to the lake for a quick XP and leveled up Primeape. And it died. The rage caused it to evolve into Annihilape, and now that that was done, it was time for another new evolution. I caught a Paldean Whooper all the way back at the beginning. I was originally intending on catching a wild Clodsire, but I never found one, and decided that this would be quicker. Clodsire was reserved ages ago by G Beans, and now it is finally timed for this Pokemon to become a reality. After a few fights, it jumped straight up to level 20 and evolved into Clodsire. I realised I hadn't ever caught Girafarig. You can catch Farigiraf at Area 0, but I wasn't planning on going there yet, so I stuck to the evolution. I nicknamed it Nelsito and went to the area next to the fairy base. Making normal boosting sandwiches causes a ton of Chansey and Blissey to appear, and as you can see, they give a lot of experience. 2 KOs resulted in Girafarig getting Twin Beam, and therefore it evolved into Farigiraf. The person who raided me a few weeks before this had reserved the Dunsparce to be called Cinda, fittingly. However, I did the nicknaming in the wrong order, naming it after the evolution instead of before it. Silly me. This Dunsparce already had Hyper Drill when caught, so one level up was enough to evolve it. And it was the 2-segment form, unfortunately. I then actually named it Cinda. Thanks again for your raid. Much appreciated. I entered one of the only 2 parts of Paldea I hadn't yet visited, North Province Area 2. Also, I found a wild Bramwellghast. Might have been useful earlier. Oh well. The nearby bamboo forest was my next destination, as this is the easiest place to evolve Bisharp. I know I can just catch Kingambit and Kitakami, yes, I can indeed, but Poniard had been with me for ages and I wanted to keep it that way. Also, I just wanted to show off how odd this evolution method is. You have to have Bisharp knock out 3 other Bisharp who hold Leader's Crests, which they have if they're surrounded by Poniard. Before going any further, I did quickly defeat the goon at the Starbase entrance, but then made a sandwich that actually looked quite nice for a change, and it boosted Steel types. A little too well, it ended up being the only thing I could find. The Bisharp and the Poniard circles were the ones I was looking for. The first 2 gauges to knock out because I had no moves that would be useful, so after that I gave my own Bisharp low sweep. That was a lot more effective. 3 Bisharp down, and my own Bisharp evolved into Kingambit. You may have thought Area 0 was next, but the first Paradox Pokemon can be obtained on the overworld. You see, the Titan Pokemon become catchable later, and Great Tusk is no different. After a bit of a tussle, it was caught. Not many people wanted to lend their name to Paradox Pokemon at this point, so it was nicknamed OK Tusk. I then did the usual 30 Pokemon challenge in the base, and for the last time in Scarlet, I faced off against a big Team Star boss featuring a big car. And I won. You know how it goes by now. Not going to pretend it was easy though, her team is probably the hardest one I've taken on the whole run. After beating Eri, I got the final star badge, which was also the 18th and final badge in total. A big twist as well, Cassiopeia is actually the leader of Team Star. Never saw that coming. So I now had 3 big final tasks to undertake in Scarlet. Task number 1, beat Arvin. So, I did that. And that finished off the Path of Legends storyline. Task number 2 was to beat Clive, who, amazingly, turned out to be Director Clavel. And after beating him I fought Cassiopeia, who, unbelievably, turned out to be Penny. And with that, the Starfall Street storyline was done, and there was only one left to do, which took a tiny bit longer than those other 2. That was, of course, beating the champion. I had to do a silly little interview to actually take on the Elite Four, and then after passing first time, which I didn't do on my first playthrough, I then beat Rika, then Poppy, then Larry, again, then Hassel. And then I took on the top champion, Geeta, and I knocked out 5 of her 6 Pokemon in one hit. After the win, I actually wasn't done yet. I had to then beat the other champion, Nemona. And yeah, I won. After the win, I had beaten the Victor Road storyline and was then able to do the true endgame. Now that I was able to enter Area 0, I could finally move the Pokédex forward. Unfortunately, Koraidon cannot be used here, so it was a very slow descent down to the bottom. I also got caught in a seemingly never-ending loop of battles, because I couldn't get past these Braviary. The main task here was to activate all of the bases, though I would only be finding 3 for now. I also found a broken elephant. 10 out of 10 game. After finding the second base, I met Screamtail, though this one couldn't be caught. And neither could this Great Tusk. However, I finally reached the cave near the bottom, and, at long last, after many, many hours of no captures, I was able to catch Screamtail. And I named it Tougher. I hopped over to Violet to get caught up to Scarlet, beating the Titan Tatsugiri, beating Ortega. Oh yeah, in between here and the next stream, I did something I never thought I'd manage. While chilling at the lake, I actually found my very own Carablast in Pokemon Go. Myself. Not from someone else. Hopefully this footage doesn't give you motion sickness, but it was very cold and I couldn't keep my hands still. I just really wanted to get a scenic shot of this momentous occasion. Of course, Carablast wasn't actually the issue. I already caught that in black. Escavalier was the one actually causing me issues. I really did go a bit too hard on Carablast in the Gen 5 video, and for that I don't actually apologise, I'm still mad. I also caught it on my spare phone. Yes, I did bring a second phone with me just in case of this exact thing happening, since if you trade a Pokemon it can never be traded again, ever. The original plan was to trade it to my spare phone, evolve it into Escavalier, trade it back, and transfer it to home, since my spare Go account isn't linked to home. So as you saw, I caught a Carablast on my spare phone as well, traded that to my main account for a Shelmet to make it as authentic as possible, evolve it, and thus had obtained Escavalier in Pokemon Go, actually caught by me, rather than having to make up excuses and get it from eBay. Also, my mum decided to choose this exact moment to heart react to my message. Well played. And with that, the monkey was finally off my back. Or should I say, the weird snail. I transferred it to home, and then after that, also transferred it to Shield, just because I can. It's somewhat of a clown. Good to know. Back to Violet now, and I did a long grinding session to knock out many, many Chansey and Blissey, as the team in this game was nowhere near as high level as it was in Scarlet. However, by the end, the team had far surpassed that game. With that done, I beat Rhyme, Grusha, Atticus, Eri, Clavel, Penny, Arvin, Rika, Poppy, Larry, Hassel, Geeta and Nemona, then entered Area 0. Now we get to this game's first truly big hurdle. So, here's the situation. You can't get the majority of the Paradox Pokemon before you have beaten the game. Upon beating the game, Koraidon in Scarlet, or Miraidon in Violet, is automatically obtained, and they are numbered 1007 and 1008, while the Paradox Pokemon are of course before them. You can, in Scarlet, catch Great Tusk, Screamtail and Fluttermane before beating the game, and in Violet you can get Iron Treads, Iron Bundle and Iron Jugulus. But the rest, no such luck. I did actually try this method where I'd connect both games to the Union Circle and see if I could cause a glitch to spawn Pokemon earlier, but it didn't work. I didn't actually expect it to work, but you never know. So unfortunately I had to do my usual when it's impossible to get a Pokemon in Dex order and turned to events. And thankfully, every single Paradox Pokemon has been obtainable from an event in some way. Because of that, it was, as always, completely fine for me to just drop official event Pokemon into the game. As you may know, the ones I obtained from events would have to be then caught properly later in order to make up for this. Therefore, the people whose names were put forward for these Paradox Pokemon did not miss out on this. Some were directly from events, some were from raids, but it didn't matter. As long as a Pokemon was available from an event in some way, I would allow myself to just transfer a fabricated version of it into my game. So I took a quick trip to Japan, and therefore, in Scarlet, I obtained an official Brute Bonnet from a Koro event. After that, I headed back into Area Zero, as next up was Flippermane, one which could be obtained normally. After that, I named it after my good friend Chris. I was also told to put a love heart at the end. After that, I transferred in an event Slitherwing and an event Sandy Shocks. Heading back to the Asado Desert in Violet, I caught the former Titan Iron Treads, and it was nicknamed PTB-92. Back into Area Zero now, and I caught Iron Bundle. It was then named X equals Penguin. Their actual name was a bit more full than this, but unfortunately, the 12 character limit strikes again. Then an event Iron Hands landed on my lap. I'll just mention as well that I put all these events into Scarlet. They were all available in both games, and sticking them all into one game meant I didn't have to swap over my two switches over and over again. Anyway, getting this allowed me to then catch the next one, Iron Jugulus. Once caught, which took a bit longer than the previous ones, I nicknamed it Cap Ghosts, which was short for Capricious Ghost, but I guess the ghost had been promoted to Captain now. And then to finish off the events for now, I transferred in an event Iron Moth and an event Iron Thorns. After that, I left Area Zero to go to Glaciado Mountain. That's because in between these Paradox Pokemon they shoved a few extra ones to catch, including this generation's pseudo-legendary Pokemon. There is a guaranteed Terra Frigibax here, so I went for this rather than wandering around for ages looking for one, as I'm pretty sure they are very rare. After an amount of tussling I'd rather not admit to, I caught Frigibax and had 14 levels to do in order to evolve it. I nicknamed it Indecisive, which was a name that took me a minute to figure out the meaning of. Some may say I was indecisive, but yeah, I'm just going to shut up now. I did the usual slaughtering of Chansey and Blissey, thankful for the fact that this was the last level grind of Gen 9, for now at least. One level caused Frigibax to evolve into Arctibax. And without any further stalling, I got it all the way to level 54 and evolved it into Maxcalibur. As you can see, my Gimmighoul coin count was certainly lacking, so I looked for every chest Gimmighoul I hadn't yet beaten in order to bring my total to the required 999. Not sure what happened to this one. After each battle I got between 50 and 70 coins, so I just needed to track down a bunch of them and eventually get a Gimmighoul evolved. Before evolving one, I had to actually catch one, obviously. These are seriously glitchy Pokemon. Throughout this battle, my guy was stuck in front of it and threw the balls in a very odd fashion. And I had to see that happen many times. I have no idea why this wasn't being caught. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that I wanted to catch it in an alternative ball, and fittingly I caught it with a timer ball. It was nicknamed DD1, and I was getting very close to the huge milestone. I say very close. I ended up spending about half an hour knocking out Gimmighoul chests, but eventually I reached 999 coins. Then I just KO'd the next Pokemon I saw, Gimmighoul leveled up, and, against all odds, something I genuinely never thought I'd be seeing in this challenge, Gimmighoul evolved, and I got Pokemon number 1000, Golden Go. And it's really fun to send it out on a surfboard. Look at him go. I was doing some Blissey grinding on both games before beginning the legendaries, and I noticed this distinctively orange-beaked Golduck in the distance. It's not exactly the best looking shiny, especially compared to Altaria, but I was pleased nonetheless. After the catch, I got my second shiny in Paldea, and of course my 10th shiny of this challenge. And I gave it an appropriate name. Now it was time to get some legendaries. The 4 treasures of Ruin all have 8 stakes scattered around the world that need to be pulled out of the ground in order to access them from their shrines. So I just ran around getting 8 for each of them, catching them, then moving on to the next group of stakes. When I walked over to the Grasswither shrine, I made a fatal error. I actually hadn't saved at all while I was doing this whole session of Scarlet, and I had turned off autosave while at Area 0, as I was making sure I could leave halfway through the final mission. In my head, I remembered that you would interact with this, then enter a cave where I would then save the game, but obviously I remembered wrong, and the battle with wo-chien started immediately. Which was not ideal, but hey, as long as I don't do anything stupid like misclick and use a fighting type move on a dark type. So, yeah. Not good. I tried to see if I could get it to respawn immediately, but no such luck. Legendaries in this game respawn after a day if knocked out, so I tried to see if setting it to 11:59 PM and letting it tick over to midnight would work, but it didn't. So I did it all over again. The chat were very supportive, of course. And I also actually saved this time. This time I also happened to catch it, and it was nicknamed Sneaky Beaky. I then did the same thing again for the next set of 8 stakes. And I saved again before pressing A at the Ice Wren Shrine, spawning in Chien Pao. After a considerably less hard time I had with wo-chien, Chien Pao was caught, and it was nicknamed Captain Obvious. Guess what? Yeah, I did it all again. Except at this point my chat had learned I had alerts set up, and they were having the time of their lives. Bring on the bits.
Did you know in Like a Dragon Majima and Ear You Kiss, Trode, Diglett, Nidoran, Mankey Venusaur, Rattata, Fearow, Pidgey, Seeking, Jolteon, Dragonite, Ghastly, Ponyta, Vaporeon.
Of course, in later streams I set a bar for how many bits had to be donated to make a message appear, otherwise I may have randoms joining just so they could do this. So anyway, I got the rest of the stakes. Well, not before I changed the text-to-speech accent to Welsh, of course.
Help, I am Welsh now. Bryn. It means hill in Welsh. Shlovia push gwingil gogera quernjo bush lontasilia gogagog.
With that madness keeping me entertained during the boring search for stakes, I headed to the Ground Blight Shrine to summon Ting Lu, and after an unnecessarily long and tedious battle, I caught it in a timer ball. It was nicknamed Bob's Marley, plural specifically. And you know the drill by now. I ran around collecting the 8 blue colour stakes, and then headed to Fire Scourge Shrine, with a Sableye crashing the party, and then summoned Chi-Yu. I mean, Splashy. I caught it after just 2 balls, which was a relief after all that time. It was nicknamed Canyon Doro.
Hey YouTube. Trans rights.
Hell yes. And now we have another 2 Paradox Pokemon, Roaring Moon and Iron Valiant, and there are another 2 that can't appear until Koraidon and Miraidon are caught. So, how did I possibly obtain them? Events, obviously. Both had Korokoro events released in Japan, so I just chucked them into the game and called it a day. Again, both were available in both games as well, so no need to add Iron Valiant and Violet separately. It was now time to finally complete the game. I headed to the Zero Lab, met the cooler Koraidon, watched this hilariously bad animation, and after some wins, well, I would try not to spoil stuff, but everyone's either played it or knows the twist that the Professor is actually an AI, and the real Professor died years ago. She made a time machine to bring Pokemon back from the past, which is where the Paradox Pokemon came from, and this AI was cooperating to let me shut down the operation, but also knew that it would start a fight as soon as it did shut down. She also wasted Master Balls catching Paradox Pokemon, despite them all having the same catch rate as Dog Trio. But anyway, I had deliberately grinded my teams in both Scarlet and Violet.
Bro thought he could become the next Riz King by doing the uncanny anchor zone dance like a sussy back in Ohio. Skull, don't bone.
I had deliberately grinded my teams in both Scarlet and Violet to ridiculous levels before doing this, so that there would be no struggling through this battle or any other later battles. I beat all of her Pokemon in one, but then plot twist, the Pokeballs all stopped working. Except those register in Professor Sada's name. Also, this animation is incredibly cool. God, I wish this game ran well enough for me to appreciate it more. Anyway, during the next battle I had to fight the big scary Koraidon. At this point, my Ride Koraidon had finally actually become my own Pokemon that I owned, meaning it was registered in the Pokédex. Hence why I had to add the Paradox Pokemon as events. And then, after the scripted loss but not really loss, I knocked it out, the AI Professor faded away, and I had finally actually beaten the game for real. After one last silly cutscene, of course, and the long end credits. Which I had to mute on the stream because for some ungodly reason, they decided that instead of making the usual banger tune from the end credits, they put an Ed Sheeran song here instead. While they were playing, I made a really impressive piece of art on Paint to show my support for Mr. Sheeran, and he sat there staring at the viewers until the credits ended, and I was able to unmute. After that, I had unlocked the post-game battle mode where I could rematch gym leaders and other trainers, which I wasn't planning on making use of, since I didn't have any grinds left. Or did I? Before also beating the game in Violet, I wanted to go back to Area 0 in Scarlet to properly catch all the Paradox Pokemon I had to get from events, as per my rules. And so I caught myself Slitherwing and nicknamed it Lorcandarcy, and I then caught Brute Bonnet and nicknamed it Sheep1718. After that, I spent a ridiculously long time trying to find Sandy Shocks, with me, as always, severely regretting putting this rule in place. Also, I'll just mention that there is a glitch that occurs where if there is a Pokemon you already own, anytime you catch it, it'll show the critical capture animation. This therefore means that you already know if you've caught a Pokemon or not before the ball hits the ground. 10 out of 10 game. I nicknamed it Birdie Brick and only had one more recapture to go. I spent a little while looking for this cave where Roaring Moon can appear. And then I spent a little while longer running around in circles until one eventually spawned. And like the others, I knew it was caught as soon as the critical capture animation played. I nicknamed it Hank Wolfman, and although that was the last Paradox I needed, I also planned to properly catch Koraidon. Even though I already had Koraidon in the Pokédex, I didn't have a tangible one that I could store in the boxes, and I felt more complete catching it this way anyway. So I caught it. Done. And this one was nicknamed Nate Chait. I did one last thing before heading over to Violet. I went to Tag Tree Thicket and found myself an Applin. This was of course required for a later evolution, which I wouldn't be doing yet, but I wanted to get it out of the way now. It was named Blasor, or BL-Asor, unsure of the pronunciation, as always. After doing that, I had ended the stream for the night. The date was the 20th of February 2025, and unbeknownst to me, they were about to add an event to the game which was going to save me from having to do another event fabrication, and actually allowed me to get them legitimately. When I released the first video in this series in May 2024, that happened to be the last time that Walking Wake and Iron Leaves were available. They have only ever been obtainable from 5-star event Terra raids, and they actually returned on the 21st of February. Unfortunately, they then disappeared on midday on the 27th, which was the next Thursday, the day I always do these streams. Therefore, I had to just do an impromptu stream on a different day and quickly rush through to the ending of Violet. Before I started streaming, I traded King Gambit and Iron Leaves to Violet and did grinding on Chansey and Blissey for a while, getting King Gambit all the way to level 100. I was going to use Iron Hands for Walking Wake and King Gambit for Iron Leaves. Yes, that Iron Hands is from an event, but I don't care. I traded them back to Scarlet and started the stream. I did everything the exact same as I just did in Scarlet. I got through the Area 0 depths, this time meeting the AI Professor Churro, and battled his team of futuristic Paradox Pokemon. While I was mashing the A button through the fight and dialogue, I was also grinding on Scarlet at the same time on my other Switch in handheld mode, defeating Chansey and Blissey to get Iron Hands to a very high level. While I was about to enter the fight with Miraidon, I had to stop everything and put my other Switch into the dock. People were confused as to what was going on, but they noticed pretty quickly when I was swapping them over. To be honest, I was more surprised that it took this long to find a shiny Chansey, considering how much I'd massacred during this run. I was pretty pleased with this though. 3 shinies in one video was not bad. Anyway, back to the main fight. I took ownership of Miraidon to add it to my Pokédex properly, which would of course be caught as well later, beat his Miraidon, left Area 0, didn't listen to Ed Sheeran again, and then instead of my original plan, which was to head back to Area 0 to recapture the future Paradox Pokemon, I had to put that on hold. I decided that level 92 was plenty high enough for Iron Hands, and even though I would have preferred an Electric Terra type instead of Water, I only had 3 of the required 50 Electric Terra shards, so I thought I'd just go for it and see what would happen. So yeah, I found the crystal that Walking Wake was spawning at in Scarlet. Even though you can take these on with real people, I ended up doing it alone instead. This is for the best anyway, as I'd technically be receiving help from another person's game that existed already before the start of this challenge. Also, people like to be trolls and deliberately play badly during these events just to frustrate people who need to catch them. So I was willing to do this solo and risk having to put up with potentially useless NPCs. So my strategy that I totally came up with myself and didn't just Google was use Belly Drum to maximise attack, then spam Drain Punch or Thunder Punch while holding a Shell Bell to get HP back, and rinse and repeat when I got to an HP percentage that gets rid of stat changes. The shield was annoying, especially since the AI characters have a single digit combined IQ and the chip damage was not particularly useful, but I overcame it and beat Walking Wake on my first try. I caught it in a net ball, and had one of 2 annoying event Paradox Pokemon sorted. It was nicknamed Hair Day, an appropriate name for a change. I then swapped back over to Violet, after having also traded King Gambit in. I actually did attempt to get Iron Leaves and Scarlet, but it actually had to be done with random people, so no. This was a lot harder than Walking Wake. It actually took 4 tries, so I'll just skip to the successful one. The strategy here was Swords Dance, then spam Kowtow Cleave, as it's a Psychic Terra type. During this particular attempt, I got incredibly lucky with crits, not to mention one of the AI teammates managing to burn it, meaning King Gambit didn't get destroyed by Megahorn. And so, after a couple more Kowtow Cleaves, Iron Leaves went down. I caught it in a nest ball, and named it Lady Melador. Now that those two were caught safely and I no longer had to worry about missing them, I returned to my original plan, which is to go back to Area 0 in Violet. I caught Iron Hands properly and nicknamed it Pickle Mango, short for Pickle Mango Zoom, as I ran out of characters. Then I caught Iron Moth and it was nicknamed Smasher, again having to shorten it from Smasher Dynamo, due to Game Freak refusing to allow any Pokemon to have more than 12 letters in its name. Iron Thorns was next, same rarity as Sandy Shocks but was significantly faster to find, and after catching it, it was nicknamed Caliburn. Finally, I entered the secret cave, and after hyping up how rare Iron Valiant was, I found 2 immediately. I caught it, and accidentally zoomed out during the catch, which made it look significantly less impactful. I nicknamed it Viridian V, short for Viridian Venom. The people with huge names were going all in on the future Paradox Pokemon, it seems. With that done, I then entered a battle with the other Miraidon. After the catch, I nicknamed it Wardmonger, and was caught up to the same point as Scarlet. And with that, I had done everything I needed to do before catching Pokemon introduced in the DLC. But first, time for a little story. Back in August 2023, while I was sorting out my living decks in order, at which point only 1010 Pokemon existed, I thought to myself, I wonder if it's possible to complete the entire Pokédex in Pokédex order without ever getting a Pokemon out of order. This stuck with me, and because I was bored, I made a full list of every Pokemon. I went through it, one by one, managing to find weird and wonderful ways to get each one. I got all the way to the bottom, with Iron Leaves being the last one, and was able to proclaim that yes, this is actually possible, assuming I followed the specific rules I set for myself. I also did a really thorough search to make sure nobody had already done this, and was pleased to find out that this was an original idea, and decided, you know what, I'm going to do it myself. I had no video editing experience whatsoever, and a grand total of 15 subscribers on my channel that had nothing but a bunch of random Walking Dead and Oblivion clips, and a terrible Minecraft house tour, which have all since been deleted. I did have plenty of Pokemon playing experience though, so I just got to it, and over the course of 5 days I finished the Generation 1 segment of the challenge. After this I spent a few weeks learning how to use DaVinci Resolve, sticking each video clip into the timeline and cutting them up with minimal edits, which is of course evident in the final product. However, in September 2023, something awful happened. The Teal Mask DLC released, and when I played through it, to my horror it turned out that in order to catch Okidogi, Monkidori and Fezandipity, you must first catch Ogerpon. There is no way around it either, you have to catch Ogerpon to progress no matter what. And Ogerpon is number 1017, with those other 3 being 1014, 1015 and 1016. This did kill a little bit of my motivation to make the series, though I still went ahead with it anyway, eventually. May 2024 was when I finally got around to finishing and uploading the first video, and the fact that this is impossible has lingered in the back of my head ever since. The comments on the videos would always say, Victini is impossible, Escavalier is impossible, Cosmog is impossible, Glastrier and Spectre is impossible, the Paradox Pokemon are impossible, and on every one of those occasions I already knew that they were wrong. But when they mentioned the Loyal 3, I truly had no solution. I just had to hope that a miracle would occur. They did release Walking Wake and Iron Leaves just when I needed them, but surely something like that wasn't going to happen again. No, it didn't happen again. When I had reached this point in the challenge, the date was the 22nd of February 2025, and there still had been absolutely no event distributions for any of these, none of them being available in Pokemon Go either, and nobody has ever discovered glitches to catch them out of order. The last point there is pretty self-explanatory. Why bother catching them in a different order? There would be no benefit to anyone at all, except me, specifically, in this challenge. I did try testing out various possible glitches on other save files to catch the Loyal 3 and their Titan forms, or seeing if I could spawn them using the Union Circles, but nothing worked. So, what was the solution? Well, there wasn't one. I was hoping that at the latest Pokemon Day presentation that those 3 would miraculously be announced as events, or Pokemon Go catches, though it was a long shot. They also announced at this presentation that Legends ZA was coming out in late 2025, much to my dismay, as it meant the end of this challenge would have a pretty big delay. But I'm too stubborn to let myself lose. At this moment, as I speak, I have 1013 Pokemon, and I've done everything in both Scarlet and Violet that is physically possible without progressing the story. If I do progress the story, I'll need to catch Ogerpon before the lousy 3, and that won't be happening yet. And so, we come to the end of part 1 of the Gen 9 segment of my journey. And what an incredible journey it's been so far. I'm hoping to either discover a glitch or just hope to get added as events or into Go in order to get them. If someone else discovered a glitch to let me catch them out of order as well, I won't be able to offer any monetary prize, but I'd be forever grateful for sure. However, I don't want people having to potentially wait years for this to happen, and it may also just simply never happen, so if too much time ends up passing, I'll either concede defeat or come up with a really stupid made-up solution, just so I can actually finish the challenge. Even if I do have to do that, I am absolutely sure that eventually they will be added to Pokemon Go. It might take many, many years, but that game will eventually have every Pokemon in existence available. If you're watching this video on release, come join me on Twitch as I try to break Scarlet and Violet and force a way to get these Pokemon in the wrong order. You never know, you might just witness history. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I make plenty other videos, some Pokemon and some not, and I won't be going anywhere once this challenge is fully completed. If you want a full explanation of my future plans, I have linked a video to that in the description. With that said, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.